Today's topic is web design. We are going to discuss how to design web pages and how to review a web page and see what are the good and the bad points of web pages. For instance, if you look in Google, if you search for anatomy of a web page, both in Spanish or in English, you're going to find lots of websites talking about the topic. So here I have some infographics about the anatomy of a web page. We can take a look at these infographics. Some are, I have several. Some are in Spanish, some are in English. For instance, let's take a look at this one. Well, these pages about anatomy of a website are basically recommendations on how to build a web page from the point of view of design. Okay, so for instance, here they tell us that a web page should have a header, and the header appears at the top of every page. It's a perfect place to present your logo and business identity. Okay, so for instance, here says logo, slogan, brand, strong image. No, I'm saying that my advice is not to use, not to insert very big headers because they use screen space, which should be used for other things. But that depends on the objective, on the purpose of your website. If the web page is oriented to marketing, to advertisement, well, then a big image, a big header may be a good point. But if the target is to provide information or have a usable website, a big header just rob you half, or well, a big part, maybe half the screen. So be careful with the size of the header. If you decide to include a big header, there should be a good reason for that. Then another part of the website is the navigation bar. The navigation bar can be horizontal, can be vertical, can be centered, can be to the right, to the left. Usually, we're used to see navigation bar horizontal in the center or in the left side, usually not in the right side. So it's much better to just follow what is commonly used. Because using what is usually done makes the web page more user-friendly, more intuitive. In fact, the concept of intuitivity, and when we say that a page is or a software is intuitive, this concept implies that everybody finds it easy to use. And basically this is because there are many other websites or software programs that do the same. So we get used to one way of working, and everything that follows within that is what we expect to find. And that makes the software or the web page intuitive. Okay, so this is navigation bar. Then here we see a central part for products and services. Well, the central part is what you want to offer or communicate. I mean, the main target, the main purpose of the page should be there. And then in a commercial web page, there is something called call to action. The call to action is something that should motivate the visitor to take the next step. That can be to learn more, to sign up, to buy something, to click on something. But in a commercial web page, there is usually some action that the company wants the user to perform. And that can be to sign up to a service, or to buy something, or to jump to a place with more information. I mean, there may be different actions, but once you have your action clear, there should be someplace in the web page with a link to that action, to start that action. And that is called the call to action. Okay. Many web pages nowadays have advertisements, small graphics advertising something, and those graphics are call to actions because they expect us to click on those images to jump to another website of the provider of that product or service and to get more information about the product or service, and maybe even buy this product. So that's a call to action because they want us to click there and go somewhere and do something. Then there is a section for additional information in this example. So they are telling us here that columns are a good way to present additional information without the site becoming too text heavy, and that the images draw the visitor's attention, the visitor's eye. And there is a tip here: use images that are the same style and size for a cohesive look. Well, then there are more examples of things that can be included in a web page, like testimonials, which are references and reviews from customers that help build trust and confidence in your brand. Then there is another section for social media. Social media sharing buttons help distribute your content and build community around your brand. And then finally, there is a footer that appears at the bottom of every page. It can act as a directory with links to other pages on your site. It is also a good place for your contact information. There is a difference between the footer and the navigation bar up here. In the navigation bar, you put the main links that all users may need at some point to navigate your website. In the footer, you may include links, but are not the main links that everybody uses every time that they access your website. But instead, we used to usually put here links that are not so often used, like for instance the contact information, because not everybody that gets into the page wants to read or see the contact information, but a few of the users may want to contact the company, and then the information is down there in the footer. Another example of a link that is not often used and should appear in the footer but not in the navigation bar is the About Us information link. Because a user may want eventually to know what is this site about, but you read that information, the user reads that information once and will never need to read it again. Okay, well, so this is one of those pages about the anatomy of a website with recommendations. Basically, it's the general idea of how a web page should be. And here it also says, and don't forget, the custom domain, that is your web address, should include your brand name and be easy to remember. Email address, upgrade to a custom email address that matches your domain, and contact info, make it easy for customers and clients to get in touch. So, okay, well, this is just one example, and it is good to compare this anatomy of web pages, because if we compare them, we will see what is the common idea, the common concept of what a web page should be. I mean, there are things that you may find in just one place and not in the others, but when you find in every page the same recommendations, well, those are the recommendations to be followed. So this one is not so graphic, it's basically text, but it says what a web page should be. Says a web page is an electronic document written in a computer language called HTML, blah, blah, blah. So if we continue reading, we see that there are different parts. For instance, you can include a site map And it says here, some websites do have a thorough listing of all the pages in the website. This is called a sitemap. It can be formatted in many ways, but it is usually presented in an outline form. As sites have gotten bigger, however, sitemaps have gone out of fashion because they are unwieldy. I mean, they are too big. An active blog that has been around for a decade can easily have tens of thousands of pages. Thus, most sites provide search functions instead of sitemaps. Well, here in this one, for instance, talks about traditional website design, and this includes navigation bars. So now we see again the navigation bars. It talks about links, and also it talks, and this is very interesting, about learn by doing. So as we noted, different websites do things differently. As a user, the main thing to remember is that websites aren't fragile. I mean, you can do trial and error with a website. You can experiment. You can click on different links and see where they take you. Okay, and you can always use the browser to go back to the previous page. Part of the objective of this class is to well, to teach you or to recommend you to be more critic on websites. I mean, to take a look at web pages, analyze the web pages, and see the pros and cons, the good parts and the bad parts of the website, and create your own opinion. And also see what are the most common things that all web pages have, and things that are not so common but can be also useful. And that is another way to learn and to become more critic. In this other anatomy of a web page article, they talk about design and content, and those are very important things when we create a web page. The design is important, but also the content. So you may have an excellently designed web page with an awful content, or an excellent content in a very badly designed web page. So the idea is that we build a web page with a proper, nice design that fits the contents. So one thing works with the other. So we have to take care of both aspects. Now I'm saying that in this second point, they are talking about the calls to action that we've already seen, and they give some examples like asking for a price of something, download some file, or add to the shopping cart. No, I'm saying that the third point is about SEO positioning. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and SEO positioning is about making our web page visible in a search result. I mean, the purpose is that when somebody searches for our products, our website appears first or within the first positions in a search result, so that the user sees our page. And this is not just by chance. I was mentioning an example. Just imagine that we sell ice creams. So what we want is when the user looks for ice creams in a searcher, our web page appears in the first position or close to the first, so that the user sees us. And this is not just by chance. I mean, there are certain techniques, there are certain things that you can do with the information in your web page to make the page more easily findable in search engines when people search for a product. Okay, I mean, this topic is long enough for a whole class, so I'm not going to get into positioning now, but basically the idea is the things we can do to make our web page more easily to be found when people search. Now, I was saying that within the positioning recommendations here, it says that we can use the HTML tag title, called title, to include some information about the web page that is very important for search engines to find and show your page. And also there are some tags called meta that maybe there is one for meta description that are usually included in the head section of the web page. And the information you put there is not displayed on the screen, but is there for the search engines to find it. And then when somebody search for some of that information, your web page is brought as a result. So these are just a couple of examples of things that we should care for if we want to improve our positioning. And there is more advice here about how to code. Here they say that we should use clean code, organized, that not only helps users to the website, but it's an important factor to obtain a good web positioning. And there is more advice here about the quality of the HTML and the use of CSS for formatting the website that makes the page nicer and also better positioned. So this is an article of what you need to learn, what every designer needs to learn to build a good web page. Okay, so think through the user journey first, step one. So it gives a series of steps, also techniques using post-its and a board to do the design. Recommend simplicity, clarity, consistency. So it's common sense, basically. Common sense, some good taste, and some marketing point of view. So here says step 2, get the visual hierarchy right. And it gives plenty of advice. Also, one common piece of advice is to use a grid for your design. To use a grid is to divide your page into sectors. I mean, you can one common grid is to divide it in 3 columns and 3 rows, and do something with each part of that structure. There are other designs. Here they talk about an F-shaped pattern, a Z-shaped pattern. So I do recommend you to read these kind of articles because you learn a lot about how to design web pages, which is not the same as encoding them. In these images, we see examples of heat maps. So these are heat maps that show what are the parts where the user moves the cursor more. In some cases, this is what they do with the heat maps, or it can be the places where the user centers the vision on. Okay, and you may wonder how do they do this? I mean, sometimes companies do studies using smart glasses that keep track of where the user points their view. So in this way, they may know what the user is watching more frequently, and then with that information, they create a heat map that puts in red the more frequently clicked or viewed zones of the screen, and in other colors, yellow or blue, the less frequently seen parts of the screen. Users that use Occidental languages that are read from left to right and from top to bottom tend to look first to the upper left corner of the screen because they are used to do that when reading, and that makes that part of the screen the most important or frequently seen. Now we notice this in these images because we can see that in these images the more heated, the hottest zones are in the top left and rather than in the right bottom of the page. So this is an example of it. so that you see it. I do recommend you to read this article. It's very interesting.